So here we are with the last video, for the moment at least, on the CAGED system. And we're going to look at how to play the natural minor scale. Now I'm not going to go through each position and break down kind of the fingerings in each position like I did in the last videos, because you already know them. Now basically, to kind of get your head around this, you really need to understand the concept of the relative minor and major. So if you don't understand what I mean by the relative minor or the relative major, then I suggest you go away and try and get that in your head. You can go and have a look at the I think it's in the beginner's theory booklet that's on my website, and just try and get your head around the concept of that, because all of the shapes that you learnt for the major scale, the 5 shapes of the major scale, or 5 CAGED shapes, sorry, can be turned into 5 shapes of the natural minor scale. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do that with one position, and then I want you to go away and I want you to try and work out how to do that with all the other positions that we have. The reason why I'm doing this is because it would be quite easy for me to just kind of do the same thing as I did before and break each one down and kind of do it. But really, the best way for you to learn how to kind of do this on the fly as you play is to actually work it out by yourself. Now, there is going to be a downloaded, like a sheet to go along with this. So, you know, you can turn to that if you get stuck, but initially just try and kind of work it out by yourself. Because that's essentially what you're going to do when you get further on in your playing. When you start kind of getting into the idea of, say, playing over chord changes, then you learn to target certain notes within the scale. And this is kind of just like a precursor, it's a start to kind of thinking in that kind of way. So we're going to break down how to change a major scale position into a natural minor scale position. So let's have a close-up of the guitar. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to show you how to change one of your major positions into a minor position. We're going to use the C position, so we're going to be using, in this case, a G major. So let's just go over a C position major scale starting on G. So G's under our little finger at the 10th fret of the A string, and we would have Now, if you understand your relative major, relative minors, then you know that if you want to find the relative minor to a key, a major key, then you put your little finger on that root note of the major key, so in this case the G, and then you could go down 3 frets, and wherever your first finger is, that is the relative minor of that major key. So in this case, we're at the 7th fret of the A string, so we're on the note E. So that tells us that the relative minor of G major is E minor. Now if we take the fingering that we just did for the G major and instead we start it from this first finger here on the E, then we end up with an E natural minor scale. Okay? So, what that tells us is that the C major position turns into an A minor position. So each of these major positions will have an equivalent chord position, minor chord position that it relates to, which will be included on the sheet in the handout. So if I play C, there's a C shape, in this case G major. Okay, and here is, if I play an E minor chord now, you can hear that even though we're playing the same notes, when you hear it against an E minor chord, then you're going to hear the natural minor. So pretty much that's it. You're going to have to go through each position and work out if the major, you know, is under the first. This is why I chose this position, because it illustrates it quite clearly. For wherever your major starting note is, if you go down a minor third and then you play the same fingering as you do for the major scale, then you'll get the natural minor scale of whatever the relative minor is to that major key. Okay, so I hope that wasn't too unclear and convoluted. Basically, I think this is just a really good way for you to initially learn the fingerings for the natural minor. In fact, you know, after a while you kind of stop thinking of it as, oh, what's the major scale equivalent, or that's the thing. You'll just kind of think of it as the minor pattern in its own right. In which case, you know, you're going to find it easier to adapt it to the other common minor scales. But as I said, there is a handout. So if you find yourself getting confused, in the handout, it'll state the minor position that you'll be playing. In brackets, it will tell you the relative major position that goes along with it, so that shares the same fingering. And also, you'll notice on some of them that there is an empty circle, and for each position, that empty circle denotes the root note or the relative root note of the major scale equivalent. Okay, so all of the information is there in the handouts, but as I said, if you can start trying to work it out by yourself, then that's going to kind of help the learning process. So that's pretty much it for the moment. What I'm going to cover with the CAGED system. I'm going to go on and do something else for a while now. And I might come back later on and show you a few more things, but I hope that helps.